What if I told you that the most important moment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe wasn't a snap, or a sacrifice, or even a battle, but a sound? A simple, metallic clang echoing through darkness. Did you hear it? Did you feel it? And did you ever stop to ask, why was it there? When Avengers Endgame faded to black, most of us were too emotional to think straight. Tears blurred our vision. We were saying goodbye to a hero who had defined an era. Then, in the silence, we heard it. Clank, clank. The unmistakable sound of metal being struck by a hammer. Instantly, our minds went back to 2008, back to a cave, back to the birth of a legend in Iron Man. It felt like a tribute, a poetic full circle, a farewell to Tony Stark. But what if it wasn't a goodbye? What if that sound wasn't a memory, but a warning? The Marvel Cinematic Universe has always been described as an ocean. The deeper you dive, the darker and more mysterious it becomes. On the surface, stories seem straightforward. Heroes rise, villains fall, sacrifices are made. But beneath that surface, patterns form. Seeds are planted years before they bloom. A single line of dialogue, a brief shot in the background, a post-credit whisper nothing is accidental. Especially not in a world curated by Kevin Feige. And now, with Robert Downey Jr. officially returning to the MCU not as Iron Man, but as Doctor Doom, that metallic echo from Endgame suddenly feels different, colder, heavier, almost ominous. To understand this theory, we need to talk about a concept introduced in Loki, a concept called Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a serpent eating its own tail, a perfect loop, an ending that is also a beginning. In the MCU, time is no longer a straight line. It bends, it fractures, it repeats. When Tony Stark meddled with time in Endgame, he didn't just save his universe, he destabilized something far greater. The time heist wasn't just a desperate gamble, it was a stone thrown into an infinite river. And every ripple that stone created is still expanding. In a multiverse, every choice creates a branch. Every possibility exists somewhere. That means for every hero we love, there is a version of them we would fear. We saw hints of this in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where even the noblest sorcerer could become corrupted. Power, when pushed far enough, doesn't always protect. Sometimes it controls. Now imagine Tony Stark, not the man who learned humility in a cave, not the man who snapped his fingers to save trillions. Imagine a Tony whose trauma hardened him differently. A Tony who walked out of that cave not with a lesson, but with a conclusion. The world cannot be trusted with its own freedom. In our timeline, captivity in Afghanistan changed him. It gave him purpose. But in another timeline, the same fire could forge something colder. A genius who believes peace can only exist under absolute control. A savior who decides that the only way to protect humanity is to rule it. That is an Iron Man. That is Doom. In Marvel Comics, Victor Von Doom is not just a tyrant in armor. He is one of the most brilliant minds in existence. A master of both science and sorcery. A man whose scarred face becomes the symbol of his pride and his pain. And what is Tony Stark, if not a man driven by ego, brilliance, and an unrelenting need to prove himself the smartest in the room? The parallels are chilling. Think about it. Tony always wanted to build a suit of armor around the world. He said it in Avengers, Age of Ultron. He meant protection. But protection can easily become surveillance. Surveillance can become control, and control can become tyranny. Ultron was his first attempt, a global defense system that turned into a global threat. But what if, in another universe, Tony didn't see Ultron as a mistake? What if he saw it as proof that humanity needed stronger guidance, his guidance? This is where the Ouroboros loop tightens. Tony dies in Endgame. The protector of Earth is gone. The sacred timeline fractures. Kang variants rise and fall. Chaos spreads across realities, and somewhere in that chaos, a version of Tony Stark discovers the multiverse, not as a playground of possibility, but as a disorder that must be corrected. Because to a genius obsessed with solutions, the multiverse isn't freedom, it's inefficiency. In the comics, Doom believes he alone can bring true peace. He once reshaped reality itself in Secret Wars. He doesn't see himself as a villain. He sees himself as necessary. And if you place Robert Downey Jr. behind that mask, the emotional weight becomes almost unbearable. Because we know that face. We trust that voice. And that's what makes it terrifying. The hammer striking metal at the end of Endgame suddenly feels less like nostalgia and more like construction. Something is being built. Not a Mark I suit to escape a cave, but armor designed to dominate realities. The Russo brothers have hinted that Tony's death and Doom's arrival are spiritually connected. Whether that plan existed in 2019 or not doesn't matter. What matters is how perfectly it fits now. The Infinity Saga ended with sacrifice. The multiverse saga may begin with corruption. Think about the symbolism. Iron, cold, unforgiving. Tony's suits became sleeker, more advanced, almost elegant over time. But Doom's armor in the comics is raw, medieval, heavy. It doesn't shine with hope. It radiates authority. In one universe, Tony refines his armor to protect others. In another, he keeps it rigid to remind the world who holds the power. And what about magic? Stephen Strange turned to mystic arts after losing the use of his hands. Pain led him to spirituality. Now imagine a Tony variant, scarred beyond repair. A man who cannot accept imperfection. Would he not seek out every possible discipline to fix himself? To enhance himself? In the comics, Doom surpasses even Strange in certain aspects of sorcery. He blends science and magic seamlessly. And if any MCU character embodies the relentless pursuit of knowledge, it's Tony Stark. He built time travel in a night. He solved problems gods couldn't. If that mind discovered spells, ancient texts, forbidden dimensions, what would stop him? Nothing. And here's where the theory becomes poetic. Ouroboros means the end feeds the beginning. Tony's story began with a hammer in a cave. What if it ends with a hammer in a castle? What if the sound we heard wasn't a memory of birth, but the birth of something darker? Imagine watching Avengers Doomsday years from now. The screen fades in. We see sparks flying in darkness, the same rhythmic clang from 2008. Our hearts swell with nostalgia. We think we're witnessing the origin of a hero again. Then the camera slowly turns. The mask lifts into frame, not red and gold, but steel and shadow. And behind it, Robert Downey Jr. Not as the man who saved the universe, but as the man who believes he must conquer it. Suddenly, the Infinity Saga and the Multiverse Saga connect like two halves of a broken mirror. Tony didn't just close a chapter, he opened a door. The stone he threw into the river of time is returning as a tidal wave. There's something deeply human about this transformation, because Tony's greatest flaw was never arrogance alone. It was fear. Fear of losing. Fear of not being enough. Fear that he couldn't protect the people he loved. That fear drove him to create Ultron. It drove him to sign the Sokovia Accords. It drove him to build nanotech armor capable of fighting gods. Fear, when twisted, becomes control. And control, when unchecked, becomes doom. Maybe Kevin Feige didn't know in 2019 that Robert Downey Jr. would one day return as Doom. Maybe the hammer was truly meant as a tribute, but Marvel has always excelled at retroactive mythology. They plant seeds, and when the time is right, they water them differently. Now that RDJ is stepping back into the MCU under a new identity, that old sound effect transforms. It evolves. It becomes the first tremor before an earthquake. Because in a multiverse where every possibility exists, the line between hero and villain is thinner than we think. And sometimes the difference isn't circumstance, it's perspective. What if Doom genuinely believes he is finishing what Tony started? A suit of armor around not just the world, but every world? What if the greatest threat the Avengers will ever face is the man who once led them? And what if that metallic echo in the dark wasn't applause for a fallen hero, but the forging of a mask? The more you think about it, the more unsettling it becomes. The MCU loves symmetry. Iron Man opened the saga. Endgame closed it. Doom could be the corrupted reflection that reopens everything. A perfect loop. A serpent devouring its own tail. Ouroboros. An ending that is also a beginning. The hammer is still striking. The sparks are still flying. Somewhere across fractured timelines, armor is taking shape. Not to save a universe, but to reshape it. And if this theory is even partially true, then the emotional goodbye we experienced in 2019 wasn't the last chapter of Tony Stark. It was the prologue to Doom. The idea becomes even more unsettling when you stop thinking about it as a twist and start thinking about it as inevitability. Because the Marvel Cinematic Universe has never truly been about good versus evil. It has always been about choice. One decision, one shift in belief, one moment where fear outweighs faith. Tony Stark stood at that crossroads many times. In our universe, he chose sacrifice. But in a multiverse with infinite branches, there must be a reality where he chose control instead. After the events of Avengers Endgame, the timeline wasn't just altered, it was destabilized. The time heist cracked open realities that were never meant to touch. We later learned in Loki that the sacred timeline was a fragile construct maintained by a single will. Once that control shattered, universes began colliding. Incursions became inevitable. Chaos became normal. Now imagine a Tony Stark variant witnessing that collapse from afar. Not as a participant, not as a hero mourning loss, but as an observer watching order dissolve into madness. Tony was always uncomfortable with chaos. He hated unpredictability. He built algorithms to predict threats. He created AI to preempt disaster. He believed the future could be engineered if you were smart enough. So when a variant of Tony discovers the multiverse, discovers that entire realities are crashing into each other because of reckless time manipulation, what would he feel? Validation. Because in his mind, this proves he was right all along. The world needs structure, needs hierarchy, needs someone capable enough to sit above it all and guide it. And this is where the transformation becomes philosophical rather than physical. Victor Von Doom in the comics does not wake up one day deciding to be evil. He genuinely believes he is humanity's best hope. He believes democracy is weakness. He believes free will creates suffering. And if you look closely, Tony's ideology was never entirely different. He just drew the line before crossing into tyranny. But a variant without that line, that is terrifying. We already saw how thin that boundary can be in Captain America. Civil War. Tony supported government oversight. Steve Rogers defended personal freedom. Neither was wrong. But the argument exposed something deeper inside Tony. His need for control was rooted in guilt. If oversight could prevent another Sokovia, he would accept restrictions. He was willing to limit freedom for safety. Now amplify that mindset across infinite realities. If one universe can fall because of unregulated power, why not regulate all of them? The multiverse is not just a collection of worlds, it is a collection of mistakes. Variants making different choices, heroes becoming villains, villains becoming gods. To someone like Doom, that is not beauty, that is inefficiency. And Tony Stark has always despised inefficiency. In Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we learned about incursions, collisions between universes that annihilate both realities. Entire worlds erased because boundaries were broken. Now imagine a Tony variant who has seen his own universe destroyed by an incursion. Imagine him watching billions die because no one was strong enough to enforce order. Would he not swear never to let that happen again? Would he not armor himself, not just in iron, but in conviction? The hammer sound from Endgame starts to feel heavier here. Because forging armor is not just about protection, it's about preparation, about building something for war. And if this variant Tony embraces both science and sorcery, as Comic Doom does, the scale of his ambition changes completely. We've already seen how powerful mystic arts can be. We've seen timelines rewritten, memories erased, realities bent. Combine that with Stark-level engineering, and you don't get a hero, you get a god in armor. Tony once said, "If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it." But Doom flips that philosophy. The suit is not compensation. It is declaration. It is a symbol that flesh is flawed, but will is absolute. There's another layer here that makes this theory almost poetic. Tony Stark's greatest act was self-sacrifice. He gave his life to stop Thanos. He proved that beneath the ego was a heart willing to die for others. But in another universe, what if Tony watched himself die and concluded it was a mistake? What if he saw sacrifice not as noble but as inefficient? Because from a cold, logical perspective, the death of the universe's greatest defender creates vulnerability. Remove the strongest piece from the board and chaos spreads. We are seeing that chaos unfold in the multiverse saga, fractured timelines, Kang variants, unstable realities. A Doom who remembers being Tony might see his own death as the catalyst for disorder. And in his mind, the solution would be simple. Never allow the strongest protector to fall again. In other words, rule instead of sacrifice, and think about the emotional impact on the Avengers. Imagine Peter Parker facing a version of his mentor who doesn't crack jokes, who doesn't show warmth, who sees him not as a kid to protect, but as a variable to control. Imagine Thor confronting a man who once fought beside him, now wielding both technology and magic with ruthless precision. This isn't just another villain entering the stage. This is a mirror being held up to every hero. Because Doom wouldn't attack out of rage. He would attack out of certainty. He would argue that the Avengers' freedom has led to incursions, that their meddling in time shattered balance, that their emotional decisions have destabilized existence itself. And deep down, some of them might fear he's right. That's what makes this theory so powerful. It doesn't rely on shock value. It relies on evolution. The MCU has always evolved its characters. Steve Rogers went from soldier to fugitive. Natasha went from assassin to avenger. Wanda went from hero to tragic antagonist. Why should Tony Stark be exempt from that cosmic pattern? The Ouroboros symbol suggests that beginnings and endings are reflections of each other. Iron Man began the Infinity Saga. Doom could define the multiverse saga. Not as a random casting stunt, but as a thematic continuation. The hero who once built a suit in captivity now forges an empire in response to chaos. And let's talk about legacy. Tony's legacy in the MCU is everywhere. His technology still exists. His AI systems remain. His influence shaped Spider-Man, influenced global politics, and defined the Avengers structure. But what if a Doom variant doesn't just inherit Tony's intellect, he inherits his memory? What if he remembers loving Pepper, remembering mentoring Peter, remembering fighting beside Steve? That emotional residue would make him even more complex, not a cackling tyrant, but a fallen idealist. And that's far more dangerous because a villain who hates you is predictable. A villain who believes he once was you is not. There's a subtle narrative brilliance in transforming the sound of a hammer into a symbol of rebirth. In Iron Man, that hammer meant escape. In Endgame, it meant closure. In the future, it could mean conquest. The same sound. 3 meanings. 1 loop. Ouroboros. And maybe that's why the theory refuses to fade, because it feels too symmetrical to ignore. The Infinity Saga was about collecting stones to wield ultimate power. The multiverse saga is about fractured realities seeking stability. Who better to attempt to impose stability than the man who once tried to build a global defense system? Ultron failed because it lacked humanity, but Doom, especially if played by Robert Downey Jr., would possess it. Twisted, scarred, hardened, but human. He would understand love, loss, fear, and he would use that understanding strategically. Imagine a speech where Doom addresses the multiverse, not with threats, but with logic. You fear me because I impose order, but your freedom has brought annihilation. I offer permanence. That is not Thanos-level nihilism. That is ideological warfare, and it all traces back to a cave, to sparks in darkness, to a man who decided he would never be powerless again. In one universe, that vow created Iron Man. In another, it creates Doom. The more you connect these threads, the time heist, the fracturing sacred timeline, the incursions, the Ouroboros loop, the more that final sound in Endgame feels deliberate. It bridges sagas. It transforms nostalgia into foreshadowing, because Marvel doesn't just tell stories, it plants echoes, and that echo is still ringing. Somewhere across collapsing realities, armor is being completed. Not polished red and gold, but forged in unyielding steel. A mask not to hide identity, but to erase it. A symbol that the era of heroes improvising solutions may be ending, and the era of absolute order may be beginning. The Avengers once assembled to protect freedom. Soon they may have to defend it from the very mind that once inspired them. And when that confrontation happens, it won't just be a battle of strength. It will be a battle of ideology. Because if Doom truly is a variant of Tony Stark, then defeating him won't just mean stopping a tyrant. It will mean proving that sacrifice was stronger than control. And that is a fight far more personal than any invasion. The hammer is still striking, but now it sounds less like construction and more like destiny. And destiny in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has never been random. It has always been built decision by decision, sacrifice by sacrifice, mistake by mistake. The closer we move toward the inevitable collision with Dr. Doom, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just the arrival of a new villain. It is the reckoning of an old philosophy. Because if Doom is truly a variant of Tony Stark, then the multiverse isn't facing an external invader. It's confronting a corrupted echo of its greatest savior. Imagine the moment it finally happens. The Avengers stand together again. New faces mixed with familiar ones. The world is already fractured. Incursions are increasing. Entire realities blink out like dying stars. Scientists can't explain it. Sorcerers can't contain it. Even the remnants of the TVA from Loki are overwhelmed. The multiverse is unraveling faster than anyone predicted. And then he appears. Not descending from the sky like a god demanding worship, not roaring like a conqueror announcing war, but walking forward calmly, armored in cold iron, cloak moving behind him like a shadow given form. The mask hides his face, but the posture, the confidence, it feels familiar because it is. When he speaks, the voice is steady, calculated, controlled. He doesn't threaten annihilation. He explains it. He speaks of incursions like a mathematician discussing flawed equations. He speaks of heroes as variables, unpredictable, emotional, dangerous. He doesn't call himself a ruler. He calls himself a solution. And somewhere in that voice, in the cadence of his words, there's an echo of Tony Stark. That's when it hits. This isn't a monster born from hatred. This is a man born from fear. The same fear that once drove Tony to create Ultron in Avengers, Age of Ultron. The same fear that pushed him to support oversight in Captain America, Civil War. The same fear that haunted him after the invasion of New York. The difference is simple. Our Tony learned to let go. This one never did. In his universe, maybe the snap was reversed too late. Maybe Pepper died. Maybe Peter was never brought back. Maybe an incursion erased everything he loved. Whatever the catalyst, the result is the same. He concluded that freedom leads to loss, that chaos breeds extinction, and that only absolute control can guarantee survival. So he studied everything. Not just quantum mechanics, not just nanotechnology. He sought out ancient temples, forbidden grimoires, dimensional gateways. Like Stephen Strange and Doctor Strange, he turned to mystic arts, but not out of humility, out of ambition. Science gave him understanding. Magic gave him authority. And the multiverse gave him purpose. Now imagine the emotional fracture within the Avengers. Peter Parker looks at Doom and sees the man who once told him, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. But here stands a version who is nothing without control. Thor sees another mortal who dared to reach godhood, but without honor. Even Bruce Banner sees a reflection of unchecked intellect. The battle that follows isn't just physical, it's philosophical. Doom doesn't fight wildly. He anticipates. He calculates. He knows their strategies because in some way he lived them. He knows the emotional bonds they rely on. He understands sacrifice. He just rejects it. At one point, perhaps, he even removes the mask. And for a second, the battlefield freezes because the face beneath is scarred, hardened, but recognizable. The same eyes that once looked at a terrified young Peter Parker. The same expression that once watched Steve Rogers walk away. But now, there's no warmth, only certainty. He tells them something chillingly simple. I saved my universe. You let yours break. That line cuts deeper than any blast of energy because it forces everyone and us to question something uncomfortable. Have the Avengers' emotional choices destabilized reality? Did the time heist in Avengers Endgame fracture more than it fixed? Was Tony's sacrifice noble but short-sighted? This is where the Ouroboros completes its circle. In one timeline, Tony sacrificed himself, trusting others to carry on. In another, Doom refused to sacrifice, choosing instead to carry everything alone. Two paths, two ideologies. One origin. The hammer striking iron. Hero or tyrant, it all depends on what that hammer builds. As the incursions intensify, Doom unveils his ultimate plan. He doesn't want to destroy the multiverse. He wants to compress it, merge timelines into a single, perfectly ordered reality. One ruler, one system, no branches, no variance, no unpredictability. In his mind, he is ending suffering, but at what cost? Free will, choice, imperfection. The very things that made Tony Stark human. And that is the final devastating irony. Because what made Tony a hero wasn't his intelligence, it wasn't his armor, it wasn't even his sacrifice. It was his ability to grow, to admit mistakes, to trust others, to step aside when needed. Doom cannot do that. He cannot accept that chaos is part of existence. That loss, while painful, does not justify domination. That control without compassion becomes oppression. In the climax, when all seems lost, the Avengers don't defeat him by overpowering him alone. They defeat him by reminding him of something he buried long ago. Memory. A flicker of a daughter's laughter. A promise made on a lakeside. The quiet pride in mentoring a kid from Queens. For a split second, the certainty cracks, and that crack is enough. Not because Doom suddenly becomes good, but because hesitation is human, and humanity is what he tried to suppress. The final blow isn't just physical, it's symbolic. The mask shatters, the iron fractures. The man beneath is exposed, not as a monster, but as a cautionary tale. A genius who tried to fix everything and lost himself in the process. As reality stabilizes, barely, the surviving heroes stand in silence. They didn't just fight a villain. They confronted a path that any of them could have taken. Wanda nearly did. Strange nearly did. Even Tony once stood close to that edge. The multiverse remains fragile. Scars linger across timelines, but something has been proven. Order imposed through fear is not peace imposed on Samshi. And sacrifice, however painful, carries more strength than domination. In the aftermath, as the dust settles, we are left with that sound again. Clank, clank. But this time, it's different. It's not a warning, not a threat, not even construction. It's a reminder that every beginning carries the seed of an ending, and every ending carries the possibility of something new. The Marvel Cinematic Universe started with a man building a suit in a cave in Iron Man. It evolved into gods, titans, and multiversal chaos. And through it all, one truth remained constant. Power doesn't define a hero. Choice does. Maybe the hammer at the end of Endgame was a tribute. Maybe it was foreshadowing. Or maybe it was both. Because in a universe built on loops, echoes matter. The hero we loved and the villain we feared may share the same face, but they are divided by a single decision: to protect or to control, to sacrifice or to rule. And that is what makes this theory so hauntingly beautiful. If you felt that metallic echo differently now, if you'll never hear that in-game ending the same way again, then you already understand the power of this possibility. The mask was never just metal. It was a mirror. And sometimes the greatest threat to a universe is the version of ourselves that chose the other path. If this journey through the multiverse made you see the story in a new light, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because the next theory might already be hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to hear it.